In my last video, I proposed what I suspect will be the most likely cause of civilization's extinction. I called it a crisis of confidence. And what I mean by that is different from the kind of crisis of confidence that you might get in a local place where people suddenly run out of confidence. I mean something broader than that, which is that humans need self-confidence and normally would get it by getting competent at something, good at something. If you're good at something, then you don't have to worry so much about being good for nothing. And it's getting hard to get competent at things because the world is becoming more complicated and AI is coming online and showing us up as human beings that is, we're not as necessary as we thought we were. And so there's going to be a crisis of competence, people not feeling competent and therefore opting for free confidence. Confidence that doesn't cost you, confidence without consequence or without competence. The kind of thing we see in the Trump movement, where Trump is basically granted all of his followers complete unconditional confidence. They can be confident no matter what. In fact, I think what they're fascinated by about Donald Trump is his tightrope walk. That is, he's like Evel Knievel jumping over sinkholes of his own making. The deeper the sinkhole, the higher his confidence remains, the more impressive he is to Trumpists, because I don't think that they're drawn to him for anything political or ideological. There's no evidence of that. They contradict themselves constantly. What they're thriving on is this sense that they have been granted unconditional confidence. That's the confidence crisis I see coming up, is that people will demand more confidence than ever because things are getting hard. And so they will grab this confidence for free that they're granted by any kind of cult leader or any kind of guru, anybody who makes them feel like they've solved reality, anyone who makes them feel like geniuses. That's what people will be drawn to in this era. And as a result, we'll end up neglecting reality and end up in worse trouble, and also what I call the dumbass or dissociation death spiral, where as things get more difficult, people will opt more and more for this kind of unconditional confidence for free, the kind of thing we see in Trump supporters. Now, I left it pretty dire. I made it sound like there's no way out, but I do think about ways out, and I want to talk about that today. I think there's an actually fairly straightforward solution to this confidence crisis, this confidence shortage we're dealing with. I've been working on it for a while. I have many names for it, but let me give you a little bit of the backstory as I see it. This is a bit of a Whig history. I don't know that I'm getting all of the historical facts right, but I notice in the early 1700s, there seemed to be an awakening to a problem that had been with humans since the beginning, but really was pretty much under control for a long time. And it has to do with what I referred to in the last session as Peter Turchin's concept of elite overproduction. The idea that more and more people think they could become high status somehow. So the crisis in the early 1700s, I don't have the full history of it. I haven't found any books that address it directly, but I have found a couple that address it indirectly. At the beginning of the 1700s, we started to get popular fiction. In Europe, I'm talking about in Western Europe, you get this rise in popular fiction, chick lit kind of novels. There was a rise of it, and there was also a worry about it. Women were spending their time in private fantasy. And at the same time, there's also an unprecedented rise in concern about the pathology of self-pleasuring. We may think that throughout Christian history, for example, masturbation was taboo. It was considered a minor infraction. But at the beginning of the 1700s, it becomes this major panic where people are suddenly freaking out about masturbation and how it causes no end of medical and psychological diseases. So what I'm seeing in there is the sudden realization, any human can imagine anything for their own self-pleasuring. Now, before that time, we had, you could say, the self-pleasuring you can get from going to church or belonging to a congregation or living under a king who you saw as a direct descendant of God or something. There was lots of fiction mixed in with the fact, and there was very little distinction between it in humankind's early days. There wasn't a difference between religion and politics. They were all blended together. But by the 1700s, I'm guessing, there's suddenly this new question. What are we going to do about people's ability to imagine anything self-satisfyingly, self-pleasuringly, self-flatteringly? Because there's kind of an anarchy that would result from anybody being able to do this to their own desire. So you've got two methods that are out there already. One is what you call the noble lie, or you could say the noble fiction. Everybody converges on the same self-aggrandizing story. You'd see this in nationalism or religion. It would be the standard approach we would take to it. You'd see it also in communism. That communism was this idea that everybody could get behind the same ideology and treat it as serious, but it would hold society together. And you're starting to see, this is probably more like my generation's experience, the rise of the kind of anarchistic approach to individual fantasy. Everybody can have their own fantasy. It's totally fine. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let your freak flag fly. Do your thing. If it feels good, do it. That kind of thing is also a possibility for how to address it. Don't worry about it. Everybody can have their fantasies. That's also had its dangers. And then there's a third approach, which was really popular. If you get a chance, watch a documentary series called The Century of the Self, in which all three of the methods I'm going to propose are illustrated, and this one in particular. Another version of what we should do about this impulsiveness comes from Freud's nephew, Bernays, Edward Bernays, who coined the term public relations and basically created the concept of consumer psychology, where you basically promote fantasies to people through consumer goods. So we're seeing that there are problems with all three of these methods, and I swear there's a fourth one to be had, and I want to talk about that. That's really where I want to go, because I think it's the solution. It's the obvious solution to this confidence crash that we're going to have. It's so straightforward. I think you probably employ it already. Decent folk do, but we have to promote it as such. So you got these first three. One is to have everybody buy into the same fantasy and lock in on it and don't tolerate any divergence from it. And if you do that, at least, everybody will be able to live by the same self-flattering fantasy. The second one is everybody do their own thing. Just go ahead and fantasize wherever you want. If it feels good, do it. Do your own thing. It'll work out in the end, that everybody, in happy harmony, everybody being themselves, letting their freak flag fly. Okay? And then there's the consumerist approach, which is have people channel their fantasies, their delusions of grandeur, you could say, into consumer products. And that has built the whole consumer economy, and there are problems with it. There are problems with our dependency on Christmas in July and every other day of the week, because we can go on Amazon and buy all this stuff and become wage slaves so we can buy more of these status things and ways to deal with our fantasy lives. So the fourth method is what I'm here to talk about. And what I want to say is I think it's kind of obvious and straightforward, and I'll give you an example of how I do it. Okay. I'm like everybody else. I need my self-confidence. I want a self-confidence boost. I need self-confidence mojo pit stops, you could say. I mean, I go through life and I get worn down during the day, and at night I'd like to fluff myself up. I'd like to just, expand a little bit, give my ego a chance to puff itself out. So I engage in what I call variously safe escapism, Offjerking, strategic gullibility, ID-CERCIZE, and Egotainment. Those are all terms for basically the same thing. As I go to Egotainment, what does entertain originally mean? It means to stretch towards something, like I'll entertain your idea. Egotainment is you stretch out your ego. It's ID-CERCIZE. It gives me a chance to exercise my id, that is to get my yayas out, to get my sense of myself as heroic out in fiction. I mostly do it through TV. I also masturbate. There's a variety of ways I do it. There's a variety of ways you do it. Everybody does it. Not everybody admits that they're doing it. And that, I think, is the big difference. That is, I just admitted, you could say shamefully here on YouTube, that I engage in a kind of delusion of grandeur through fiction. That is, when I'm watching a movie, I can feel like I would obviously do the same things as the heroes do, or like the badass villains do. It doesn't matter. I see someone who's cool and I kind of identify with them and I fluff myself up through that. Or I might do the same thing if I'm masturbating. I mean, these are just standard moves. Or I might do the same thing by going to church. I mean, there's a variety of ways of doing this. You can say a lot of what is put out there for humans to do with their free time are chances to puff ourselves up like that. For example, I also play music, and I like to fantasize that I'm really good. I'm not really good, but I do love that feeling, and I remember it's fiction. I call it Offjerking because it's me kind of acting more arrogant than I deserve. It's me taking confidence for free, but I'm doing it by venting it. I recognize that I'm venting. I am basically off-gassing my own jerky tendencies. And I'm doing it in fiction, okay? Spectator sports can have this effect. Church can have this effect. Video games, all sorts of pastimes. I think what we mean by entertainment is actually egotainment. Entertainment is often interlaced with art, with wisdom, you could say education, all of that. But at the heart of it, we have this kind of strange relationship with entertainment. We act like it's kind of an electic, something you would do if you had some discretionary time and money. At the same time, we actually use it as though it's at least an addiction, if not a human necessity. Well, I'm saying it is a human necessity. We need our egotainment. We need ways to be able to feel puffed up, even though reality's hard. So for this, you really need to get to where you admit that you have this appetite for those fictional uplifts, those mojo pit stops. Because if you don't admit that, you can't really manage it. And if you do admit it, you can manage it just fine. Whether you go to church or whether you jerk off or whether you watch spectator sports, you see people doing the healthy thing all the time. After it's over, they zip up and get back to reality. I've been to Trump rallies. I've been to death metal concerts. In terms of a ritual, they're exactly the same thing. You cosplay up and you go and you chant these words that make you feel like a badass, like you're super superior to everybody else. You engage in what I call we glee, which is the glee of being us as compared to those stupid people out there. The only difference between the two is what happens in the parking lot after. After the death metal concert, people get in their cars and go home and get back to their work and their lives. After a Trump rally, people act like they have just discovered something more real than reality. So what I'm saying is, if we can actually admit that we need this fictional uplift and stop pretending that it's true just for the extra mojo boost we get from that. If, for example, we get to the point where we say, I believe in scientific progress. I believe in practical management of things. I relieve through church, or I relieve through video games, or I relieve through VR or porn or whatever. I'm basically trying to demote the highfalutin versions of it, like church, to an elevated standard at which I hold all forms of egotainment, ID-CERCIZE, Offjerking, safe escapism. To make it safe, all you got to do is just admit that it's fiction and that you need it. Just think of it. An alcoholic is doing the same thing. They are off-jerking by drinking and feeling like a swell fellow, like they're, got all this wisdom while they're drooling and all that sort of thing. Well, they cannot quit or manage their addiction if they deny that they have that addiction. And I feel the same way about all of us and our need for mojo boosts, for mojo pit stops. We need them. Can we just admit it? It's why my theme in all my work with Trumpists or any other kind of grandstander, some kind of lifestyle brand grandstander who says, I am superior because I am a member of this, or because my team is the right one, or I'm wearing the right team jersey. My message remains the same. Self-love is important. Self-confidence is important. But get a room, don't let it go to your head, zip up after, and do not turn basic social infrastructure into your circle jerk vanity project. That's my one objection to the Trumpists. They could have their damn rallies. They could sit around and froth about how wonderful they are and how stupid everybody else is, just like the mindfulness community and the spiritual communities, everybody just go do your thing. But do it knowing that it's fiction. You aren't actually superior to everyone else. Relax into it. Enjoy the fantasy like most decent folks do. Take your flights of fancy, but with a return ticket to reality secure in your heart pocket. It's not a matter of how far out you go, it's whether you remember to come back. We need you. All hands on deck. This is reality. But take your breaks. Go fluff yourself up the way everybody does and admit that you're not exceptional compared to other people, like egotism is beneath you and you don't need that kind of mojo boost. No, I'm guessing you do. Even the people, maybe especially the people who say egotism is beneath me, maybe they need it more than most. The people who say, no, I'm a realist. Now, I'm saying escapism is inescapable for human beings. We are not like other creatures. We have more exposure to all sorts of real and imaginary, past, present, and future threats and missed opportunities. We are FOMO sapiens. We live in fear of missing out. Why? Because we have language. We can do all this counterfactual. If only this happened. What if that had happened? What if this is going to happen? What if I woke up on the wrong side of the world? What if I took a wrong turn back there? This is the human condition, and it's different from other animals. We trudge through a sandstorm of mojo-eroding possibilities that no other critter can imagine. So what I'm saying is we need a special way to cope with this, and the answer is safe escapism, ID-CERCIZE, Offjerking, strategic gullibility, Egotainment. Just some names for it. Try it. And by the way, I think you probably already have lots. The only difference between decent folks and absolutists is that absolutists have let it go to their heads and they have forgotten to zip up after. Take your flights of fancy. Enjoy them. You need them. They're one of the special joys of being human, is that we can actually engage in that kind of godlike fantasy. It's through language. Only language makes it possible for us to consider the possibility of the infinite, including the infinite good and the infinite good for infinite time, like heaven hereafter. So that's one of the joys. It's also one of the temptations. It's also one of the distresses of being human, because we can imagine infinite good and see where we fall short. Have some compassion for your kind. Have some compassion for the entire species. We are driving drunk under the influence of language. It makes us an incredibly anxious species and good at reassuring. The only trick left for us to figure out if we want to survive is how to give ourselves reassurances without distorting our ability to track reality. Because the only rule in all of life, 3.8 billion years, the only thing we conclude is adapt to reality or die. That's the only rule. So we have to keep our eyes on reality, and we also need to do this kind of off-jerking in order to be able to cope with reality. We need our breaks. Take your breaks. Take a break from me, for example, right here. But let me remind you, I've got a study group that meets every Sunday morning to work on how to engage with people who have fallen into this absolutist addiction, the addiction to feeling like they are right, righteous, mighty all the time. In general, we focus on the Trumpists, but it's not exclusive to them. And then the other thing is, if you're dealing with someone at close range, their own egotainment in real time at your expense, someone who's gotten into a sadomasochistic addiction to putting you down, making your life hard, anything like that, get in touch. If you're in a partnership, if you're in a marriage, a work situation where someone is basically using you as a malfunctioning prop in their sadomasochistic campaign to feel good about themselves, I can help you work out strategies for dealing with that. All right. So thanks for listening. See you next time, maybe.